May 11, 1943. 4 o'clock hours. Holt's Bay, Attu Island, Aleutian Islands. 0 degrees Fahrenheit. A wind that doesn't howl, but screams, tearing across a landscape of volcanic rock, ice, and sucking mud. Private Kaito Tanaka, his breath a frozen plume inside his sentry post, stares into the pre-dawn murk. His world is a monochrome of gray and white. Below him, the only two beaches where an army could possibly land, Massacre Bay and Holt's Bay, are silent. Quiet, just as Colonel Yamasaki predicted. Tanaka shifts his weight, the thick wool of his Imperial Japanese Army uniform stiff with frost. He is cold to his marrow, but he is confident. For weeks, they have transformed this godforsaken rock into a fortress. Interlocking machine gun nests carved into the permafrost. Mortar pits with pre-sighted kill zones. Snipers buried in the scree. The entire defensive scheme, honed by months of isolation, rests on one unshakable, geographical truth. The Americans must come from the sea. They must charge the beaches. And when they do, they will be funneled into corridors of slaughter, crushed between the icy water and the towering, impassable ridges that form the island's spine. One of those ridges looms directly behind Tanaka's position. A jagged, terrifying wall of rock and ice known to the few American cartographers who've mapped this place as Fishhook Ridge. It is a sheer, near-vertical face, a geological fortress wall. In Colonel Yamasaki's tactical briefings, it was dismissed with a single, contemptuous word: volcano. Impossible. Not even the most desperate enemy would be so foolish. It is their anchor, their safety. The Americans are a mechanized force, reliant on trucks and tanks and heavy guns. They cannot, come from there. Tanaka blinks snow from his lashes, peering again at the empty beach. The plan is solid. The trap is set. All they have to do is wait. For miles to the south, a line of shadows is moving against the impossible. It is 5:30. First light is a dirty smear on the horizon. Led by hardened Alaskan scouts and a handful of mountain-trained officers, the 3rd Battalion of the U.S. 17th Infantry Regiment isn't walking. They are climbing. They left their heavy coats behind on the transports. The exertion is their only heat. Ice axes bite into frozen ground. Ropes whisper over rocky outcroppings. Each man is a silhouette against the pale rock, weighed down by rifle, ammunition, and a crushing sense of exposure. This isn't a tactical maneuver. It's an act of desperation, born from a bloodbath. For 5 days, the main American force at Massacre Bay has been stuck, chewed to pieces by Yamasaki's hidden defenses in the passes. The plan has failed. Casualties are horrific. In a dimly lit command tent, General Albert Brown made a brutal calculus. To continue the frontal assault was suicide. The only alternative was the one place the Japanese would never look. So here they are, 650 men, handpicked and terrified, scaling a 3,500-foot cliff face in a freezing gale. A single slip sends a shower of rocks into the void. A misplaced crampon could mean a silent, tumbling death. They don't talk. They communicate through labored breath and the shared, white-knuckle focus on the next handhold. Below them, the sounds of the distant, stalled battle are muffled by the wind. Their mission is not to fight their way up, but to simply arrive, to appear where they cannot be, to become ghosts on the high ground. With each foot gained, they are moving beyond the map, beyond Japanese reconnaissance, beyond the very logic of modern warfare. They are betting everything on a single, shocking moment of revelation. Back at the Holt's Bay perimeter, Private Tanaka is rotating out of his post. The morning is fully lit now, a flat, gray light that offers no warmth. He's stomping his feet, trying to force feeling back into his toes, when a murmur runs through the trench line. It's not the urgent shout of contact from the beach. It's a confused ripple, men pointing not out to sea, but up. Tanaka follows their gaze. His brain rejects what his eyes are seeing. Silhouetted against the steel-gray sky, along the razor-edge crest of Fishhook Ridge, the impossible wall, their fortress anchor, are figures. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They are moving with purpose, not as a scattered patrol, but as a military formation. Sun glints off a helmet. The distant, tiny shape of a machine gun is being set up on a promontory that overlooks their entire rear area. For a long, frozen second, There is only the wind and the disbelieving silence in the trench. The tactical certainty that has sustained them for months shatters. Volcano. The word echoes in Tanaka's mind, now hollow and terrifying. The Americans aren't just on the ridge. They are behind them. The defensive belts facing the beaches are suddenly obsolete. Their supply lines, their command posts, their artillery spotters, all are naked, exposed to fire from above. A low curse escapes the soldier next to him. The entire Japanese defensive plan, so meticulously crafted around the island's geography, has just been inverted by men with ice axes and ropes. The ridge was not their shield. It has become the American highway, and the first shots haven't even been fired yet. The battle is already lost in the minds of the men staring upward, their disbelief turning to a cold, creeping dread. Colonel Yasuo Yamasaki's command bunker, dug deep into the permafrost near Chicago Harbor, receives the reports in staggered, panicked bursts. A field telephone jangles. A breathless runner stumbles in, his face a mask of frost and fear. Americans, on fishhook. They have the high ground, Colonel. They're above Engineer Hill. Yamasaki, a man of stern discipline and calculated resolve, feels the map beneath his hands turn to paper. Every inked defensive line, every arrow denoting a kill zone, is now a lie. The Americans have performed a tactical sleight of hand. While his elite troops were fixated on the brutal, satisfying meat grinder at the passes, a ghost force was scaling a cliff they'd written off as nature's own fortress wall. The brilliance, the sheer, mad arrogance of it, is a physical blow. His mind races. Engineer Hill. That's the key. The modest rise behind his main line is the last defensible terrain protecting his central headquarters and the critical radio equipment. If the Americans pour down from Fishhook and take it, they split his force in two. Holt's Bay and Massacre Bay will be isolated from each other. It will be a death by 1,000 cuts. Orders bark from the bunker, desperate and reactive. Units are yanked from the stalemated front lines. Mortar crews scramble to resight their tubes, their trajectories now having to arch almost straight up to hit the ridgeline. The Japanese army, a model of ordered defiance moments before, is now forced to look two ways at once, to the beaches they still hold, and to the towering spine of their own island. The initiative, that precious, intangible force, evaporates. It now belongs to the men on the cliffs. On the crest of Fishhook Ridge, First Lieutenant John Jack, Dunn of the 17th Infantry, finally lets himself feel the burn in his lungs. The ascent is over. Now comes the violence. The view is both breathtaking and terrifying. Spread below him like a tactical sand table is the entire Japanese rear, the winding paths connecting their positions, smoke from hidden kitchen fires, the ant-like movement of troops now scrambling in confusion. His men, exhausted but electrified by their position, don't wait for elaborate orders. The first shots are almost casual. A sniper, nestled in the rocks, spots a Japanese officer running between two dugouts. The crack of the Springfield M1903 is swallowed by the wind, but the result is instant and clear. The officer drops. A machine gun squad, a Browning M1919, finds a perfect, plunging field of fire into a gully where a platoon is assembling. The sound of the gun is a steady, tearing burp. You can almost see the shockwave of panic it sends through the lines below. This isn't a battle of rifles and bayonets. Not yet. It is a demonstration of sheer positional dominance. American mortars, painstakingly hauled up the cliff, begin to walk their rounds along the exposed pathways. Every shell is a message. There is no safe place. The Japanese fortifications, designed to repel an assault from the sea, have open backs. Their perfect defensive nests become tombs as grenades are rolled down into them from above. The psychological effect is more devastating than the casualties. For the Japanese soldier, trained to defend a defined line, the concept of the front has dissolved. The enemy is no longer in front. He is in the sky, on the holy high ground, looking down on the back of your neck. The fear is primal. It erodes discipline faster than shrapnel. By nightfall on May 12th, the tactical map of Attu is irrevocably redrawn. The American pincer is closing, not from the sea, but from the island's very roof. The 3rd Battalion, now reinforced and resupplied via the impassable route they've established, holds Fishhook Ridge like a vice. From this anchor, the rest of the 7th Division begins to push, squeezing the Japanese into two shrinking pockets around Holtz and Massacre Base. For Colonel Yamasaki, the reports are a dirge. His ammunition is dwindling. His wounded have no hope of evacuation. The freezing mud claims as many men as American bullets. The brilliant defensive victory he had planned has been undone by a gambit he never conceived. The Americans didn't outfight his initial plan, they made it irrelevant. In his bunker, by the light of a flickering lamp, the realization settles upon him with the weight of the island itself. There will be no rescue, no glorious last stand on a beachhead. The ridge he dismissed has become the anvil upon which his command will be broken. The only choices left are annihilation or the unthinkable. He looks at the haggard faces of his staff officers. They see it too. The battle for terrain is over. Now, something darker begins. A final, desperate chemistry starts to brew in the heart of the Japanese perimeter, born from shame, honor, and the chilling wind off the Bering Sea. The chill that seeps into Colonel Yamasaki's bunker is more than Arctic. It is the cold of finality. Radio silence from Imperial headquarters confirms it. They are alone. The Americans control the high ground, the skies, and the sea lanes. His once formidable force is compressed into a muddy, freezing strip of coastline near Chicago Harbor. The statistics are brutal. Of his original 2,600 men, fewer than 1,000 remain effective. Rifles are frozen shut. The last rice is gone. Men are chewing on leather and boiling lichen. Yamasaki is a samurai, a poet soldier. He understands that military defeat is one thing. Spiritual surrender is another. The American tactic, scaling the impossible, was not just a maneuver. It was a profound insult to his army's competence. It revealed a flexibility, a willingness to embrace suffering and risk that his own rigid doctrine could not match. To die in a futile last stand on the beaches would be meaningless now, but to die taking the fight back to the enemy? To reclaim, in a final, violent blaze, a shred of shocked respect? That becomes his calculus. On the morning of May 29th, under the cover of a dense, freezing fog, he brews his last, desperate chemistry. He gathers his remaining officers, his walking wounded, his clerks and cooks. The order is whispered, passed from man to man with a grim, ceremonial finality. Prepare for Gyokusai, this shattered jewel. A final, all-or-nothing charge. Not to win, to perish with honor. Destroy the American command posts. Kill as many as possible. Die near the enemy's heart, not cowering in a hole. Every last bullet, grenade, an ounce of strength is pooled. Bayonets are fixed on empty rifles. The wounded are given hand grenades. This is no longer an army. It is a single, guided missile of human desperation. 3 o'clock hours, May 30th. The fog is so thick you can taste it, a wet, icy blanket that swallows sound and sight. On the American perimeter, sentries of the 32nd Infantry peer into nothingness. The silence is absolute, unnerving. Then, a new sound filters through the murk. Not gunfire. A low, collective murmur. It grows, twisting into something inhuman. A chant, a scream, a cacophony of voices shouting banzai, and guttural cries. The fog parts like a curtain, and hell walks out. A tidal wave of ragged, screaming humanity erupts from the whiteness. They are not soldiers in formation. They are a frenzied mob. Officers lead with samurai swords. Men with bandaged heads charge with bayonets. The wounded limp forward, clutching grenades called potato mashers. They crash through the first American foxholes in a storm of steel and madness. The initial shock is total. A medical tent is overrun. An engineer battalion, caught unprepared, fights with shovels and fists in a chaotic, close-quarter melee. The American line, confident after days of methodical advance, bends and nearly breaks under the sheer, terrifying psychological weight of the assault. For a few, blood-soaked hours, Yamasaki's final chemistry works. He achieves his shocked respect. The Americans, from general to private, are stunned by the sheer, sacrificial fury. But the charge is a chemical fire, intense, terrifying, and ultimately self-consuming. It has no strategic fuel, no follow-up, no reserve. As dawn's gray light burns through the fog, the momentum of the Gyokusai bleeds away into the mud of Engineer Hill. The Americans, recovering from the shock, bring their overwhelming firepower to bear. Machine guns cut swathes through the charging masses. Mortars rain down on the assembly areas. The charge becomes a slaughter. Colonel Yamasaki is found among the dead, his sword in his hand. His final, poetic act was to lead his men not in a defense of the ground he'd lost, but in a violent protest against the manner of its taking. By midday, organized resistance on Attu ends. Of the Japanese garrison, only 28 survivors are taken alive, all too wounded to kill themselves. The rest, nearly 2,400 men, are dead. The cost is horrific on both sides. Over 500 Americans killed, 1,200 wounded, with thousands more felled by frostbite and disease. The Battle of Attu is over. But its lesson echoes far beyond the Aleutian fog. The U.S. Army learned a brutal, transformative truth. Willpower and innovation could redefine the possible. A cliff was just a route no one had tried. The Japanese command was handed a darker omen. WWII was not just industrially superior, but mentally agile, capable of turns so unexpected they collapsed reality itself. The impassable ridge stands silent now, a monument not to nature's barrier, but to the human capacity to ignore limits. The wind sweeps across Fishhook, whispering the story of the day an army climbed a wall and, in doing so, sealed another's fate. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to the War Archives as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.